General Counsel to start us off with that discussion.
I just texted you the statement.
Sorry. There you go.
Check. Okay. Alan Houston, Associate General Counsel with the Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel. I'm just going to give a short introduction to this item on the agenda. As nonpartisan staff, I'm not here to argue for or against or advocate any position in relation to this item, just to set the table for the discussion. This item, environmental, social, governance factors, also referred to as ESG factors or standards, that is used in the context of credit or investment ratings. As the name implies, these are ratings that are given by a ratings company based on how that company evaluates a company or government's implementation of certain standards related to the environment, their social impacts, and their governance. Recently, on April 21st, the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, state treasurer, state auditor, President Adams, Speaker Wilson, and Utah's congressional delegation transmitted a letter to S&P Global Ratings objecting to S&P publishing ESG credit indicators for the state of Utah. That letter is available on the treasurer's website, and it was covered both locally and in national news outlets. The chairs, this wasn't a study item for the committee, but the chairs were interested in having a discussion about it. It has been now added as one of the committee study items. But for today, the chairs have invited our Solicitor General, Melissa Holyoke, and Deputy Treasurer Kurt Slaw to present to the committee about ESG factors and how they relate to the state's credit rating.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. Ms. Holyoke, are you here?
Yes, I'm sorry.
You're out. You're right there. Great. Go ahead. We'll turn it over to you two. Thank you.
Thank you, chairs, committee members. Thank you for your time today. As Alan Houston had mentioned, there has been a recent movement on the use of ESG. As he explained, it's the environment, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. And these are factors and criteria, they're non-financial factors that are being used now to assess companies or investment opportunities. So ESG categories have been described to generally comprise the following. Environmental criteria consider how a company performs as a steward of nature. Social criteria examine how it manages relationships with employees, suppliers, customers, and communities. And governance deals with the company's leadership, board composition, alignment, and stakeholder rights. So these are various terms to describe the consideration of ESG factors. You may also hear social responsible investing, social investing, or social investments. Those are some other terms that are used. So these products have recently been developed. So ESG financial products have been developing increasingly. And ESG investing is currently a term open to much interpretation. There's little long-term evidence in this regard and how funds perform over time or whether they're more than just a marketing ploy. The Employment Retirement Income Security Act, which is also known as ERISA, you may be familiar with, applies to retirement plans in private industry. And these include defined benefit plans, pension plans, defined contribution plans. So there's been an important debate regarding ERISA rules and regulations back and forth between administrations on whether plan fiduciaries, those that are in charge of the investment decisions of those plans, can act and consider ESG, these environmental, social, and governance factors, when they're making their investment decisions and exercising their shareholder rights. So in response to this growing debate, the administration in 2020 promulgated rules to clarify that the prudence and loyalty obligations required by plan fiduciaries to select investments should be based solely on financial considerations relevant to the risk-adjusted economic value of a particular investment or investment course of action. So those rules were issued in December of 2020. In May of 21, an executive order was issued on climate-related financial risk, which directed the Secretary of Labor to rethink those rules and identify any agency action to be taken regarding pensions. In October of 2021, the Department of Labor issued a new rule, and the current administration set forth proposed regulations for ERISA to make it easier for 401k plans to offer plans focused on these ESG objectives, including climate change. which would include selecting plan investments, including investments in a QDIA, and exercising shareholder and proxy voting rights. So in December of 2021, just several months after that, the Attorney General Reyes, along with Treasurer Oaks, led a multi-state coalition of 24 states objecting to these proposed rules. And what we argued was that this social and political issues should not be considered by fiduciaries in employee retirement savings investment decisions. So we are not opposed to any person or entity considering ESG or other social factors when investing their own money. But individuals and companies should not promote social causes through their investments when they are making decisions on behalf of others. We argue that adopting the proposed rule and allowing employers and investment managers to consider ESG factors is really making a financial decision, turning a financial decision into a political one, and that the Department of Labor should protect employee retirement security by not adopting a rule that encourages or emboldens employers or investment managers to consider these factors. Since that letter, we have seen ESG financial factors criteria pop up sort of throughout the financial sector, and we have continued to lead multi-state letters opposing those rules, including letters opposing proposed rules and requests for information in regarding the OCC, the FDIC, the SEC, and the MSRB. So I know that's a lot of alphabet soup, but they're coming. We're seeing this sort of pop up everywhere. And we continue to monitor it. We are seeing, we expect additional regulations, particularly in the SEC, that will be coming in the coming months. And we will be responding to those regulations in turn. We do believe that this is important for the state to respond to. And as I just mentioned, we are working together with the Treasurer's Office on responding to these regulations. But this is also an area where state legislation may be appropriate and potentially litigation. And I'll have my colleague from the Treasurer's Office talk a little bit more about the SNP letter and some of this other information.
Okay. Thank you so much, Melissa Holyoke. And my name is Kurt Slaw. I'm the Chief Deputy State Treasurer. This issue has been one that has been top of mind for Treasurer Oaks for about the last 6 months, and he's been using every opportunity he can to raise the flag and let people know how concerned he is about this issue and its detriment on our capital markets. Now, I first want to say that even though a lot of the policy that is being pushed through ESG right now is coming from the left, we feel that this should be a bipartisan issue because the concern is that it circumvents bodies like this, our state legislature and federal legislature, to push certain social agendas that are being driven by investment management firms using our own money, right? So that is our concern. It's not necessarily a left-right issue. It's the circumvention of the political process in favor of kind of a dictatorship from the capital markets. So I'm happy to provide whatever detail. I appreciate Ms. Holyoke giving you some background on some of the actions that have been taken jointly by our offices. And I have additional background and detail if that would be helpful for the committee to consider. But I also want to be sensitive to your time and want to make sure that I focus on the things that you wanted to hear today. So chairs, if it's the desire of the committee, I can proceed with some additional background, or I can just turn it over to questions to the committee, whatever you prefer.
I think we would love to hear the background information.
Okay.
Is
great.
it like an hour or?
No, not at all.
Okay. Let's go ahead and hear
maybe,
that background.
5 or 10 minutes and I can end whenever you guys, or please stop me if you have questions along the way.
Well, I'm sure we'll have questions.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
let's hear your presentation and go from there.
Okay, so I'll try not to repeat everything that Ms. Holyoke just referred to, but environmental, social, and governance, ESG, refers to a social credit and scoring system that implements stakeholder capitalism. And I'll define that term, stakeholder capitalism, because it's very important to understand. By influencing the raising and allocation of capital according to so-called environmental, social, and governance factors. Today, 98% of U.S. companies disclose ESG scores, and more than 15,000 companies worldwide have signed the United Nations Global Compact, an initiative designed to use ESG for tracking the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So stakeholder capitalism. So stakeholder capitalism refers to the idea that companies should serve not only their shareholders, but also serve other societal interests by advancing social agendas that go beyond the pursuit of profit. This notion was popularized in the decade following the 2008 financial crisis as a way of challenging the prevailing model of shareholder capitalism, the idea that firms should maximize profit by selling goods and services. Today, stakeholder capitalism is no longer a challenge to the system. It is the system. In 2019, the Business Roundtable, which represents America's largest corporations, overturned a 22-year-old policy statement that previously said that a corporation's paramount purpose is to serve its shareholders, and in its place signed and issued a commitment to lead their companies for the benefit of all stakeholders. Most companies in corporate America and Western Europe have changed their behaviors, statements, and even compensation models to accord this new model. So you may ask, who are these stakeholders? Really, the stakeholders can be just about anybody that you deal with. It could be your employees. It could be those who are receiving externalities from the product or service that you're producing. Or it could just be society at large. And it's undefined, right? So corporations, businesses are left to define their own stakeholders. But that's important, right? Because it allows those who would allocate capital that is not in the best interest of their shareholders to state that the reason they're making a move is not for political purposes, but to benefit other stakeholders. Okay, so on its face, stakeholder capitalism is in tension with the demands of corporate law in many states, which hold that directors and executives have a duty to one master, shareholders. While Milton Friedman worried that a shift away from shareholder primacy would cause companies to operate less efficiently and would be less profitable, leaving investors, workers, and consumers all worse off in the end, there is even deeper concern about the shift to the multi-stakeholder model. Its core premise undermines the vision of American democracy itself. Stakeholder capitalism and the ESG movement demands that companies and their leaders play a fundamental role in determining and implementing society's core values. But for the companies to pursue social causes in addition to shareholder interests, executives and investors must first define what those social and society interests should be. This is not a business judgment. This is a moral judgment. Every day, citizens are rightly skeptical of American capitalists playing a larger role than they already do in defining and implementing our country's political and social values, which were historically determined together by our citizenry publicly through debate and privately at the ballot box, through a system where each citizen's vote was supposed to count equally. A healthy democratic republic should not want or pressure its business leaders to substitute for the role of its citizens in making moral judgments about matters ranging from racial injustice to climate change. In the United States, we created a system of institutional pluralism. For example, we have many different institutions that have traditionally been separated, or that have traditionally been separate, such as church from state, the three branches of government, nonprofits from politics, and business from politics. Different institutions serve different societal interests. ESG seeks to dissolve the boundaries between leaders of different institutions so this elite class will settle moral questions. This is a European model of elites getting together to solve problems in back rooms away from the common people. In contrast, the United States adopted a democratic process where one person has one vote and questions of moral significance are settled in the public square and through legislative processes. When corporate leaders take upon themselves and their companies to implement political policies, they undermine our political institutions where these questions have historically been resolved. Democracy is messy and slow. Dictatorships can move more quickly to solve problems. However, this is often at the expense of different parts of society. Democratic debate leads to better outcomes for people and protects the disadvantaged or less powerful constituents. This is one of the prices of freedom. To do away with this model is to do away with freedom and move towards dictatorship. Instead of one person, one vote, ESG moves to a corporate model of $1, one vote. In the end, whoever has the most money determines what constitutes problems and how we will solve them. So I'm gonna pause there for a minute to see if there are questions from the committee chairs.
Thank you. We do have one question. Representative Thurston.
Thank you. It's maybe, well, it could be for either, but I think it's more for Melissa. But so the question of fiduciary and investor protection laws, has there been any attempt or serious attempt by anybody to sue corporations saying you are not acting in my best interest as a shareholder? And it seems like that's something that could happen, but has that happened? And has anybody been successful at that?
Not that I've seen so far. On the ESG side,
Yeah.
not that I've seen so far. I mean, this is developing, but this isn't uncommon in the fiduciary side from just a conflicts of interest perspective. Like, so for example, if a fiduciary sends all investments towards some real estate project that they have a specific interest in, obviously there's
Right.
lots of suits and actions that have been in that regard. So this is not dissimilar to that, but I haven't seen the uptick of plaintiffs' work, but it's still early.
So have because URS obviously invests in these things. Has there been any talk by the URS board? I know the treasurer is part of that, in creating a legal cause of action, saying, "Hey, look, we gave you our money, we want return. We don't want. We'll take care of the politics. You take care of the finances." Is that something that's being considered by the URS folks?
So as far to my knowledge, we're not investing in ESG within the URS defined benefit program, at least.
Well,
there may be some options in the defined contribution program, but
let me clarify that. So the options that I have as a URS participant, you're taking my money and investing that in portfolios, and some of those portfolios are investing in corporations that may be seeking something besides financial return.
correct. Yeah.
So that there may be some sort of a connection saying, hey, look, we invested in your company. We've got X number of $1 million invested, and you as a board are not looking out for our interests as investors.
Yeah.
So that is, yeah.
Yeah, got it. No, I understand the question now. And yeah, I think there probably could be plausible cause for action in certain situations. I don't have any comment on what's been done in the past. I'm not really sure.
And one other line of questioning, oh, he's not there, so I'll just go ahead. So then what happened? We sent the letter. There were like 9 or 12 or something specific requests. Did they just throw it in the garbage and ignore us, or did they actually respond saying, hey, we've received your letter, we'll get right back with you? Or what did they do, S&P?
Go ahead.
Yeah, they've provided kind of a cursory response, but I think we're hoping to receive more. And so, yeah, we will be following up jointly with the Attorney General's office with Standard & Poor's on getting their full response, I guess.
And that was particularly troubling because this has to do with our ability to pay back the state, right? The state's ability to pay back the debt, and this has really has no material impact on that. So,
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Representative Stenquist.
So just to clarify, and you made reference to this, but if an individual wants to invest their money in some area based on a cause or their own political beliefs, that's an individual's right to do that, and we're not worried about that. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to when you're using institutional investors, when you've got your 401k and maybe you're investing in mutual funds that have a broad range, that's where that's where the concern really lies, is because we want to have full consent and transparency about how those, what the criteria are for people to invest their money. And then the other one that I think is very concerning is when it comes to, credit rating evaluations. And so I'm really glad that you brought this forward. I think this is very concerning as well. Yeah. But I guess that was sort of a question, but that's my understanding of what you're saying is
Absolutely.
that's what our concerns are. Okay, good.
Thank you, Representative Lyman.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for the report. I think this is such an important topic. When you said that we don't invest in ESG, I think ESG is investing in us on a big scale. The AICPA came out with their Sustainability Standards Board, brought somebody over from BlackRock to head up so the AICPA is incorporating this in their audit provisions across the board. And I guess from a URS standpoint, there's certain roles that the URS might play. From a legislative standpoint, the legislature has got to become educated about this. They've got to step into that space and make some laws that protect Utah from this agenda. And that's what I'm hoping that we can in these discussions that we'll do that.
This touches on so many areas, like you mentioned. I mean, insurance, banking, consumer finance. There's lots of areas that this could touch on, and I think they all need to be explored.
It is. It really is pervasive. It's pervasive, and it's hard to frame it in a bill because the bill would say we're going to fight Marxism or something, which.
Yeah, but
maybe that is easy to put in a bill.
That's a good point. I think it probably is in multiple areas of statute and law.
And maybe we do need a full assault on ESG, and I really appreciate what the treasurer's been doing. But so often we take it piecemeal when they're not taking it piecemeal at all. They want everything. I was reading about the natural asset corporations that BlackRock and others have formed. They value the earth at $4 quadrillion, and they're monetizing it. They're selling it. If you want to buy stock in one of those natural asset corporations, you can do it, and it's really frightening because you take some of those large corporate interests. They seem to have more sovereignty, certainly than the state of Utah, and sometimes more than the United States of America when it comes to the whole world stage. So it's tough, but that's the role of states, is to protect the citizens of the state from those kinds of encroachments wherever they're coming from. So it's something we really got to take seriously. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. I don't see any other lights, but I would like to ask a few questions if possible. I totally agree with what Representative Lyman just said. We really need to take this on as much as we possibly can from a state level. And really appreciate the AG's office and the Treasurer's office taking a real leadership role in this and being very vocal about it. I guess my question would be, where can we start? What's your opinion on where we can start policy-wise, and what are some of the things some other states might be doing?
Okay.
If you know.
Yeah, I think we're probably still in the beginning stages of what some good policy might look like, right? So we want to recognize that the treasurer has a fiduciary responsibility for public funds to the taxpayers themselves. So first of all, I would say I wouldn't be in favor of anything that encroaches on our constitutional authority to provide best services, including limiting us to certain financial providers based on their participation or non-participation in ESG. We would like to retain that flexibility. That said, there might be something legislatively that we could do that gives us cover if we want to weight those things in RFPs or future business awards or those sort of things, so that it allows the treasurer through our own discretion to weight political activism amongst the financial providers as a negative factor in any state business that we would award. So that could be a potential area that we could run with. obviously ensuring that all public monies are invested for the benefit of shareholders, who are us, right? And not in the benefit of stakeholders. We could pass something along those lines. So there's a few different things that we could explore. And I think, our office, and I know the Attorney General's office, is really committed to working with you over the interim to identify some of those and potentially create some good legislation. So.
Well, I appreciate those comments, and I agree with you. I don't think the intent would be to do anything to change what your two agencies are doing for the people of Utah. You do a phenomenal job. But I think from just a people's perspective, a state sovereignty perspective, we need to really start looking at things that will protect the people of Utah and our treasurer and our AG's offices from being able to be restricted from what good practices are, which you guys execute on a great level. So thank you very much for being here. Oh, I do have another light. Representative Briscoe.
Thank you. Welcome, Kurt. Good to see you again. Melissa, I think we've crossed paths once before. I'm having a memory of a law professor at the University of Utah who published a paper, and then he has a couple of other names behind it. So I think all the dirty work was done by, some law students because they read 30 integrated resource plans. I downloaded this fall's Pacific Core Rocky Mountain Power Integrated Resource Plan. It's over 300 pages. I have not read all 300 pages. I got through 60 or 70 or 80 and scanned, a lot of what was in it. Rocky Mountain Power, Pacific Core does it every 2 years. And one of the things they do is they look out 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future. And they go, look, we have a statutory responsibility to provide low-cost, dependable, efficient energy supplies to our customers, individual homes, businesses, et cetera. And so one of the purposes is to do some risk management. And risk management, what do we think are there things that we need to be concerned about that we should be planning for now, knowing there are going to be some problems? They had a particular focus, and that was drought. Thermal, coal-fired power plants, I don't know about natural gas, but coal-fired power plants use enormous amounts of water, significantly large amounts of water. And the law professor at the U was concerned that only 30% of these 30, not even 30% of them even mentioned drought, even talked about it, even mentioned it, which would seem to be a gross oversight in terms of planning for the future. So I printed off, your April 21, 22 letter. It's pretty dense. Someone very bright wrote this. Melissa probably. There are some great names on here. Spencer Cox, Deidre Henderson, Sean Reyes, Marlo Oakes, John Dougal. I've worked with some of these people personally in the legislature. I have tremendous respect. Then I started looking at some of the footnotes. So I got on the Standard & Poor website, and I think some of your questions are to the point because I would like them to give a lot more detail than they give on their website. And I'm a little frustrated because I'm trying to find some contact information for anyone at Standard & Poor, and not everyone's corporate website. They put up a lot of barriers for anyone trying to contact them. But I did find this. So here's examples of key ESG. And the other thing, one of the things you asked for very early in the letter is you ask them, they have a rating scale of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So positive, neutral. So you're E1, S1, or G1 if you're positive. If you're neutral, you're E2, S2, G2. If you're moderately negative, this would never work in school. As a public school teacher, this would never work. If you're moderately negative, E3, S3, G3. If you're negative, you're E4, S4, G4. If you're very negative, E5, S5, G5. So they gave Utah E3 on environmental, moderately negative, and they gave us neutral scores of S2 and G2 on social and governance indicators. And as I recall, your letter asked them to withdraw all these. So I'm just focusing right now on environmental credit factors. And they have 5 bullet points, but one of them is other, which is the catch-all, which means whatever we come up later that we can't think of right now. So there's 4 bullets. The first one is climate transition risk factors, including market changes, technology, legal, to address mitigation and adaptation requirements related to climate change. The second one is physical risk factors, longer-term shifts in climate patterns such as chronic heat waves, like we're experiencing now. Natural capital factors, plants, animals, soils, minerals, and air. I don't know exactly what that means, but I do know what the next one means. Waste and pollution factors, such as air emissions other than greenhouse gas emissions, which is an issue in Utah. So, in your opinion, are we doing a good job of that in Utah? Mitigating future climate risks, chronic heat waves, air pollution? Are we where we need to be right now on all those issues?
I'm gonna interject, and I'm gonna say that I think that is the very reason we're having this conversation here today. Should that be relevant to whether or not Utah is a good investment? That's the very reason that we are here having them present to us today. Those issues are worthwhile conversations to have when you're talking about environmental impact and things of that nature. But when you are talking about Utah's credit rating, and instead of looking at the likelihood of getting paid back for your investments, you are instead looking at whether or not we are complying with your political beliefs or your personal agendas. That is the very reason that we are here today discussing ESG. That is why, look, I try to avoid hyperbole. I try to avoid these highly charged partisan issues because, frankly, I'm just over partisanship and I just want to solve problems. But you need to know that ESG has the potential to absolutely upend financial markets. That is the reason that we're here. And so asking them whether or not they think Utah's doing a good job on environmental issues, that is not a question for the treasurer's office. The question for the treasurer's office is, if we invest in Utah bonds, will we get paid back? Mm-hmm. Is our economy stable? Those are the appropriate questions. And I would ask you not to answer whether or not you think we're doing a good job on the environment.
Question
because,
withdrawn, Mr. Chair.
I don't know that that's your place.
I'm not finished. Question withdrawn.
Okay.
It's fair to ask me not to ask that question. So I would suggest that companies are not serving their shareholders who don't pay attention to these issues. I would suggest that you cannot totally separate how companies perform on some of these issues. And I've been looking in the environmental issues. I haven't looked at the social and others. I think you have some fair questions here that I'd like to see answers to. I think some of your questions are simply designed to get to the point you want, which is to tell them to go to hell. Because I don't think all your questions are totally fair. I mean, you're smiling, right? I mean, I've got an article, I just came across this last night, and this is from The Lancet magazine. It's a British medical journal. And The Lancet magazine says, of all the deaths in the world last year, 1 in 6, 9 million people, were killed by pollution. Number 1, air pollution. Number 2, water pollution. Number 3, lead. The good news in the United States is we have better environmental protections. And so it's not as great here as it is in Ghana or et cetera. I mean, but I'm not sure that I want to have money in my own personal accounts investing in companies that are damaging Nigeria and helping turn it into a failed state. I'm not sure. I think sustainability is increasingly becoming a key measure of whether we're going to be profitable or whether a company's going to make it. So this is another point of view here. But I'm happy to work with you offline, and I'm happy to dive into this a little bit more detail. I mean, one of your points is that, and you make some excellent points about how Standard & Poor and other people screwed up everyone screwed up. All the major parties screwed up on the credit fiasco. It made me so damn mad to read that Michael Lewis's book and find out that Goldman Sachs was betting for and against itself on credit, on CDOs. But, you said, well, are people going to be sued because their ESG policies don't match their actions? Well, maybe that's the point. maybe the point was they weren't open and honest when they were evaluating a lot of these credit companies. They're putting out these pieces of garbage they were calling honest investments, which were not, and which almost took down the world economy, almost killed it. And then we saved Wall Street, but we didn't save Main Street. We didn't save people whose houses are underwater, which is why I think a lot of Americans are still very, very angry today, and justifiably so. But maybe one of the things some of the people who are pushing some of this want to do is to bring some more accountability and transparency to how well these businesses work.
Thank you,
It's my
Representative.
soapbox.
Thank you,
I'm
Representative.
happy to respond to Representative Briscoe.
Please.
Chairs, okay. So first off, to your original comments, yes, environmental factors are a big deal, and they should be a part of any credit rating, and they already are. They've made that clear that providing an ESG rating doesn't create a new type of credit risk factor that they haven't already considered. So they already have the state, for example, you mentioned, and it's highly prominent in our ESG indicator that drought is a risk for Utah, right? That not being able to provide enough water is a risk factor. That has already been incorporated into Standard & Poor's risk rating for Utah when we get a AAA. The problem with ESG is it isolates that risk factor away from all other credit risk factors that should be considered when investing in a state. So I think that's our concern, is it unfairly points out certain risk factors that tend to be more politically motivated and doesn't fairly put that in perspective with other credit risk factors. So, yeah, of course. And then I think, let's see, so what were your other questions? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. Senator Thatcher.
Thank you. So I think, as you can see, this issue is deceptively huge. This has so much potential, and nobody really understands what it is. Nobody understands how we got here, and I don't think anybody saw the tremendous harm that could come to the state of Utah. And so I personally am very grateful to Marlo Oaks, our state treasurer. I'm grateful to Sean Reyes, our AG, for being willing to dig in and look at this, because I think we had some comments that kind of highlighted, we can't just run a bill and say you can't do this. But there are certain things that we can do to mitigate the risk to the state of Utah. There are things we can do to protect our industries and our businesses. This is a highly complex issue, and the likelihood of a bunch of politicians getting it correctly without getting the input from our attorneys, from our AG, from our financial experts in the treasurer's office. We have people here from the banking industry that are going to need to be part of this solution. This is something that I think we are going to take our time on. We're not proposing any legislation here today, but I think that this issue is probably going to be in front of this committee 2 or 3 or 7 times between now and the end of interim. Look, I am all for people pushing for what they believe. If you believe that we are not doing enough to protect the environment, then by all means, organize, work with your legislators, push to do more. I fully support people pushing for what they believe in. Where I draw the line is having people come in and hijack markets, having people come in and attach political beliefs to financial markets. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to make a motion that the chairs open committee bill files as needed and as necessary to support the work being done by the Treasurer's Office and the AG's office in conjunction with other interested parties that I'm sure are going to come forward. And I think we will probably have this. I think we'll probably have this in front of us maybe not in June, but certainly our next meeting after that. So I'm making a motion that we go ahead and open bill files as needed to address this issue and to support those already doing the work.
Senator, thank you. I'm going to rule that motion out of order since we already made a motion earlier to allow us to
Well,
do that.
fantastic. Then I am out of order.
So we will make.
Won't be the last time.
We will plan to do that as needed on this particular topic. It is a topic that we're going to want to watch and manage very, very carefully in this committee. We'll plan to do that. So any other discussions or questions? We did.
Talk about public opinion. I'd like to go when that's available.
Yeah, we talked about having public public discussion. How many people would like to make a comment on that? Okay. Thank you very much. Raise your hands again. How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we're not going to do all of you. Can you guys kind of decide who's going to come up? We'll have. Let's go with 5 people.
You should probably set a timer.
Okay, and we're going to set a timer for 2 minutes. Okay, so you've picked the 5 people. So it'll be you, not you. You work here on the committee. So you decide the 5 people, and then just start coming up.
Am I one? You might be surprised what I say. Yeah, go for it.
Come on up. Give us your name and organization.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, my name's Doug Butts. I'm not wearing a suit and a tie, so my credibility would be a little bit different. But why am I here? We've talked a little bit about the ESG, and I want to talk specifically about that. It sounds like we all believe about the same thing, but I want to talk about some things that I find that a lot of companies don't talk about. I redesign corporate financial systems. I fly all over the country, and I help a lot of companies. So I'm going to help Utah right now. All of us are fairly intelligent, so let's talk about corporate evaluation. We're talking about ESG, the evaluation of what is a corporation worth? What is Utah worth for the receipt of capital assets, capital money that comes in? I'm going to ask some questions of the committee to get you thinking about this. Are you familiar with the evaluation of corporate bankruptcy using Z-scores? If I ask each one of you, do you know what the quick ratios are on your Utah's financial balance sheets? We have ESG, we have certain scores. When money comes into Utah, how does Utah look from a viable standpoint, from a corporate standpoint? Are they risk? What is the risk assessment? So get your mind thinking about, so probably the next time you meet, do you know what your quick and long-term and your ratios, those are on your balance sheet and your income statements. I find that when I go into corporations, they don't even know the valuation of the discounting of cash flows and maximization of owners' wealth. We're talking about stock evaluation. So Utah stock evaluation, we keep talking about ESG. So to wrap up my time, I want you to be thinking about really how do you present Utah from a financial standpoint and that score. This is extremely important when you're trying to bring money into Utah. Are we stable as compared to California or other ones? Obviously, we have good conservative evaluations. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Can you make sure you sign the clipboard there?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if you would, please leave some contact information.
I will.
I'd like to talk to you after.
Please do.
Thank you. My name is Steve Ace. I live in the Cottonwood Heights area. My grandfather told me, turn of the 19th century, that he rode a horse from the point of the mountain over here to Antelope Island. That meant to me that there was hardly any water in the lake. Then I remember in the 80s when we were putting millions of dollars into pumps, pumping water out into the West Desert potentially because downtown Salt Lake was going to be flooded. Now, some 30 years later, we're talking about the drought again. These things are cyclical. We haven't even determined definitively whether climate change is even a thing, and we're going to kowtow to those that want to push financial decisions based on those types of agendas. Under no circumstance should the government be putting money toward these ideological agendas. That's the climate change part of it. If we start to talk about the social ramifications of this and the social agendas that are being pushed by these policies, where do we stop? Does that mean that we have to agree with critical race theory if we're going to get a loan at the bank? That's where this is going. I think it's a slippery slope, and I think I'm preaching to the choir here, save one person. It seems to me that you're all in agreement, but these policies are leftist agenda policies that they want people to follow, and they want to force governments to follow them. This is something that we should never consider doing. Our freedom is worth way more than this. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please leave your signature there.
Thank you for letting us speak today. We appreciate that. My name is Dawn Bates from Sandy, and I'm also a member of the United Women's Forum of Salt Lake Chapter. I'm so grateful that we all agree, because we don't always, and it's nice to come and talk to people who are in agreement with the things we are concerned about. This is the proverbial camel's nose in the tent issue. And we've seen this happen again and again. As it starts out as something, this isn't seemingly unimportant, and we go ahead and we follow that course, and then we find ourselves in a big mess down the road. And I believe that this is basically global interference in our own constitutional republic. They can't tell us what to do. We have a government that has lasted for longer than any other government on the face of the earth. We know how to do it right if we just do it the way the Constitution has written it. The Constitution and Bill of Rights are the basic intellectual and legal underpinnings of our society, and nowhere in ESG is that document mentioned. That's a problem for us. It's the main job of government, state and local, to protect our rights, our life, pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's what we hope that you will do. And it sounds like we're moving in that right direction, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your comments.
Hi, Mark Lasesha, Sandy, Utah. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. It was mentioned here that we're going to take this into committee or into several 5, 6, 7 meetings and running into maybe June and July. But even like as of next week on the 22nd through the 28th in Geneva, Switzerland, there will be a worldwide meeting of about 194 countries where they are going to, with the World Economic Forum, and I have to say just straight up that dirtbag Klaus Schwab and the people running that, along with the WHO and in concert with the UN, are going to attempt to strip our constitutional rights away with a treaty they'll be signing, stating that all global health issues will be under the control of the communist organization, I believe, the WHO, and the leader Tedros, who has a terrible history and not even a doctor that should be in charge of running any type of a medical world crisis. But that is going to be taking place this coming week from the 22nd to the 28th. Is anybody in this committee aware of that meeting and the ramifications that may occur between the 22nd and 28th, when they will attempt to sign a treaty? Biden administration has agreed to sign that treaty already, that will supposedly strip our constitutional rights away, where they can come and say anything is a health issue. Even they could call obesity a new scam or plandemic, and take over run a complete organization or taking over our health systems if that happens. Is anybody here aware of that? And how this has to, what we're talking about today leads directly into that. And we need to move quicker than several meetings are running into June or July. We may not have that time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Let's keep the decorum going. It's been really good. Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Chelsea. I'm from Utah County. I think we need to just call ESG what we all know it is. It's the Chinese Communist Social Credit Score. And we are very well aware that the digital ID that's trying to be pushed is going to be connected to that, along with vaccine and health passports, along with our bank accounts. And what happens is when you guys decide that we're doing something you don't like, we get cut off from money, from food. If you think we're not aware of what's going on and how this is tied to the UN, we are very well aware. Utah's very awake to what's going on, and it needs to end today. We're quoting the University of Utah. University of Utah is one of the most corrupt institutions in the state of Utah. And I happen to know for a fact that there are legislators on this board that are in bed with this. So it doesn't surprise me that this is being pushed. We're not dealing with this. We're not going to do this. Utah's taken a stand. We're saying no. It needs to end today. Thank you.
Please, we really want decorum in the committee. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. We're going to close public comment at this time. Did we have one more?
Just one more.
Okay, one more.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Hughes, and I just wanted to make a request that this committee consider our individual rights when it comes to looking at this ESG factor, and not just be thinking. I mean, I'm a financial advisor, and I'm very concerned about the combining of the political with business. But I'm also very concerned about our private liberties, and if ESG is put in place, that will impact the ability of individuals to get loans, to get insurance, to be able to do many things. And so I just request that you that you look at how you can protect our individual constitutional rights in whatever actions you take. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, so we're closing comment at this time. We have a motion to adjourn. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I did. I don't know how I sounded. You sounded great. You got his attention. Yeah, nice meeting you, sir. Thought all of the comments on this issue. It's going to be a busy next few years.
Excellent comment. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the wish I had more time. I had a ton more data. Thank you.
I don't have the need to do that now.
Yeah, but
Oh, yes. Thank you.